Leading a startup team, whether you're delivering a sugar rush, stocking coffee, or getting a regular delivery of snacks, Office Depot has solutions that fit every startup culture, from getting those first business cards and stationery to ordering fleece pullovers with your new logo. To learn how Office Depot and the California Technology Council have partnered to bring you savings on all of these startup essentials and more, go to californiatechnology.org/member benefits. I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. Evaluate Pharma in its latest World Preview report is projecting solid growth for prescription drug sales through 2022. Driving the growth is both the new products expected to come to market during that time and the industry's embrace of orphan drugs, the source of half of that growth. We spoke to Antonio Iervolino, head of forecasting for Evaluate, about the new report, the growing number of drug approvals, and the challenges drug makers face that could alter the outlook for the industry. Antonio, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
We're going to discuss Evaluate Pharma's new World Preview report, what's driving growth of pharmaceutical sales, and the threats that are lurking out there. Let's start with the big picture. Stock prices took a hit. Venture financing and the IPO market have been affected, but rather than being the end of good times, your report is generally upbeat. What kind of growth are you forecasting, and what's the case for continued growth in drug sales?
Well, based on the sell side consensus, we foresee the pharma industry basically continue growing for 2.3% CAGR, the compound annual growth rate, through 2022. I think there are two main factors in driving this growth. Number one is seeing some health innovation, product innovation coming to the pipeline. And the second one, I think, is experiencing some of the setbacks in the past. I think there's an ongoing and increasing collaboration from between pharma companies as well as regulators to actually come out with the right criteria to design clinical trials. So I think also the pace at which pharmaceutical products are getting developed and coming to market is much faster compared to what we've seen in the past. I think those definitely are driving two of the major factors. And obviously, once the clinical trials in design according to the specification, the endpoints designed by regulators, I think we're also seeing pharma companies embedding market access criteria more and more in their clinical trial strategy. I think that's definitely is reflected in terms of record number of FDA approvals that we have witnessed in the U.S. We have 66 new approvals in 2016, beating the record of 50 approvals in 2014. And also what is worth noting is that some of these approvals came up with a breakthrough therapy designation, and the consensus focus for most of these approvals, and I'm thinking about the Opdivo, the Ibrance from Pfizer, those came with a quite hefty sales prediction. So we believe that kind of reflects health innovation pharmaceutical product companies have been able to generate over the past 5 years. It's been, in a way, a period of reconstruction for many R&D organizations in the pharma world.
This burst of approvals in the 50-55 range, for the longest time, we were living with an average of 27 FDA approvals a year. Is this a long-term change you think we're going to see continue going forward? What does the pipeline suggest?
I believe so. I think pharmaceutical companies have been able to restructure away clinical trial strategies, trying to target more niche populations, because often that's what they have been asking for several years, and it took some time because obviously the innovation cycle in the pharmaceutical industry takes some time to readjust. As players have been asking for this for the last 5 to 10 years, and now we're finally seeing some interesting development. I think for one out of all, I think that the way Roche has been developing Belizumab previously in multiple sclerosis. I think it was quite a smart development strategy because aside from tap into the very competitive relapsing multiple sclerosis market that has been able to larger NAD, which is primary progressive multiple sclerosis. I think that is just one example, but I think we've seen many more of those examples. So we see this being a trend going forward. Whether it's going to maintain this have kind of very positive trend, keep topping out the previous year record, but that's really very much kind of the volume of active products in the plasma for highlighting is actually the value and the quality of the new innovations we've seen coming to the market and the benefit it will bring to patients as well.
You described these increased FDA approvals with the term productivity gains, but do we know, are we actually seeing productivity gains in terms of reducing the cost or time to market?
We don't have specific as of yet. We know that I think one pharmaceutical company comes to phase 3. I think generally the products with the growth on phase 3 development tend to have higher chances of approval, at least in the US. So definitely this is something that we've seen happening. I think that this picture doesn't necessarily capture another key shift in the pharmaceutical landscape, which is what happens after regulatory approval, which is potentially one of the breaks in one of the downsides in the outlook that we foresee after 2022. I think the US has been probably somehow of a laggard in embracing some of the market access tools compared to the European market. I mean, recently we've seen some managers increasing the risk of exclusion of products which are not included into formularies that be much more selective on which cost they're willing to fund. And even products which came to the market with high expectations, such as Entresto or PCSK9 inhibitors in the cholesterol space. I mean, the uptake during the first 12 months has been much below what the expectations were. This is primarily due to market access. I mean, the products were bringing some level of innovation, incremental benefits, but the price then was just way above what the system could afford. So there was some niche for excluded from some formulary.
You expect half of the sales increases in the next 5 years to come from R&D projects. Does that suggest growth will be rather uneven from company to company?
Yeah, and I think that will also, will potentially determine some of the merger and acquisition will see coming forward, because if the average growth that we foresee is about 6%, we see the top 25 companies growing an average below that figure. So most of the growth will come from emerging players in the market, companies with a couple of assets in their portfolio. So, I mean, one point in case, Pfizer snapping Medivation and kind of leading product standard. So obviously, smaller players with more specialized niche pipeline will be still under the radar of bigger pharmaceutical companies.
You mentioned the acquisition of Medivation. Oncology continues to be the leading indication. What role do you expect immunotherapies to have on driving this area in terms of growth?
Well, obviously, to think of the Keytruda and Opdivo primarily, those we expect to be the key products in the future outlook. I mean, Opdivo is expected to be, if not the top-selling product, one of the top-selling products in the next few years. But clearly, the recent setback on the non-small cancer indication might potentially affect the future outlook of the product. But from a technological standpoint, from an innovation standpoint, we clearly see a lot of innovation happening with the PD-L1 inhibitors, especially I think into the combination there. I think it's not going to be necessarily driven by the monotherapy use of immunotherapies, but primarily I believe the combination use, which also will raise the question about the affordability and the cost of these complex therapeutic regimens.
One of the things you note is that Roche has now edged past Novartis as the number one drug company, but interestingly enough, in part, this is because of what you call the more unconventional parts of its pipeline. Can you explain?
Sure. I mean, it's actually quite interesting to see the portfolio strategy taking shape at Roche. Because historically we used to see Roche primarily being driven by oncology innovation, whereas yes, we do have some oncology innovations and growth expected coming out from Roche. As you think about the Projecta, the Gazyva, although the growth is heavily dependent on success of upcoming trials. So the key innovations come from multiple sclerosis therapy, ocrelizumab, or from the other experimental areas like hemophilia. They invest a lot with emphysema, and then there's also a lot of attention for netumab in the quite challenging therapy such as Alzheimer's. So I think it's quite an interesting proposition because there's a lot of risk. Venturing out to a four different area has not been always successful. Also for Roche in the past, so that's a lot of curiosity. Oncology is still a bit of there's a lot of promise, of course, but there's a lot of challenge coming up from biostimulants. Probably the outlook at the moment is quite conservative upside down.
One of the trends that's continued in recent years, which you alluded to earlier, is the industry's embrace of orphan drugs. What's driven that, and how do you see orphan drugs contributing to the industry's overall growth in the next couple of years?
It will continue. This is really a key component of any new R&D strategy. It's really finding those niche of unmet needs, a very specific patient population with the unmet needs is larger, and it's still easier to prove that there is incremental benefit pharmaceutical companies can offer. And the new technology will enable pharmaceutical companies to actually target a specific patient population. So I do believe that the investment in rare diseases and orphan indication will continue to grow. I think at the moment the attention on the payer side is slightly less sophisticated compared to other bigger indications that are larger by teams. But I think going forward we might expect more attention also from the payer side.
Though you're expecting growth across all categories, I think one of the surprises is that the area of slowest growth is expected to be antivirals after seeing the surge we've had there with the new hepatitis C treatments. What's happening in that category?
Well, I think it's also you need to look at the starting point. Antivirals are starting point basically what are going to solve the other active therapies that we've used over the last 2 or 3 years. So I think the current level has been inflated by this tremendous innovation in the market over the last 3 years. But clearly, because we're talking about therapeutic options that cure or partially cure disease, so obviously there's price competition element, but there's also patient stock basically reducing over time. But I think that the pricing competition is something that's been affecting Gilead in recent times, and we'll see this growing as new therapies come to market. So I think it's just more kind of antivirals will normalize around the lower sales value more than a decline, an organic decline.
Despite the rosy outlook, there are some threats on the horizon. Anyone who has followed this industry will remember the struggle the pharmaceutical industry had chewing through its patent cliff. Are we now facing a similar situation for biotech? Is there a coming patent cliff that is going to really impact that industry, or do you expect that to be quite different?
Well, it's yes to both questions in a way. So I expect it to have a quite significant impact. It will be different in terms of timing. And obviously, the competition that will come from biostimulants will be quite different from the competition that we saw in when generics typically hit the market. I think with biostimulants we are at a turning point because obviously there's some of the key monoclonal antibodies, key complex molecules will come with patents in the next years. And I think in the paper we refer to the kind of the biologic patent cliff, second era of patent cliffs. And those biosimilars, finding heavily complex, and we've seen also a lot of attention from branded players. They are probably likely to better understand the competitive game. I think the first wave of biosimilars took a lot of time to penetrate the market, really establish themselves both in Europe and in the US, although the process started later. I think what is changing now, as I mentioned earlier, we have brand players coming to the picture. For those who think that cost of biosimilar from a cost saving perspective, it's becoming more and more prominent on the agenda of payers and regulators. I mean, if you think about it, the key small molecules going to patent already. The biologics are the key cost saving lever, which is less payers to try and modulate the other expenditure beyond the kind of formal restructuring of the other system.
We're in an election year in the United States. We've had the Turing controversy and the Valiant controversy, and now most recently Mylan and the EpiPen. Despite these high-profile cases and congressional blustering, what's the likelihood of actual legislative action on pricing that affects the outlook for growth?
I mean, I think there's been a lot of speculation, but I mean, historically, nothing really happened on the reforming really the pricing rule. I mean, the health sector, the way structure is set up in the U.S., it's hard to change. So the own invasion the U.S. embraced in the near term, in a radical reforms like the one we've witnessed in Europe in terms of implementing health technology assessment by the 9 in England. However, I think things have changed regardless of the election when it comes to pricing. I think that the whole U.S. market is much more aware of the importance of kind of funding therapies and allocating funds therapies that offer incremental benefits and cost-effective benefits to the system. And I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation the increase in the number of drug exclusions from both CVS and Express Scripts, and that's a symptom that the system is much more prone to scrutiny and to in a way limiting the access to drugs which are not necessarily cost effective, and that obviously will have implication on price negotiation as well. And also what we're seeing is the pharmaceutical companies been really trying to identify what new ways to pay for those drugs, because I think that's where they have to need to have a profound rethink about it, because I think that some of the new pharmaceuticals being launched to the market with the current pricing model are not necessarily affordable. So I think that's where some of the innovations, body and innovation, will have to take place in the pharma world.
Antonio Iervolino, Head of Forecasting for Evaluate. Antonio, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks so much, Danny. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send an email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.